So as you can see, we've got this area prepped already for the synthetic lawn to go down. So it's boxed out. There's going to be planting all around it, which is why we've got the boxing there with the mulch. It goes right up to the side of the synthetic lawn. So that mulch is going to be right around here. Another area that we've prepped. So that just needs compacting and a layer of fines across the top. As you can see, team, we have dug this out 100mm through here, digging it right through 100mm. As we're taking it away, we are coming back with a load of gap 20 to backfill that and then compact it. It's then followed by a thin layer of blinding, like a crusher dust or a sand, just to stop any of those sharp aggregates coming through. So we're just digging that out at present. So just making sure you're digging around any obstacles that might be in the way, such as manholes like this one here, street signs, that sort of thing. Again, just the 100mm thickness, 100mm depth, and backfilling with the gap 20. Alright, so you can see as per the prep, got boxing here for a little garden. So it's crucial you're working with the other landscapers on the project. Spread this nice and evenly through here. It's important to get your falls right, so for any stormwater, so it's actually flowing out away. It's not going to pull up beside the house or anything like that. See the boxing, it's come up hard against the concrete path here. Once you've got it in, away you go with your plate compactor. This is the mix of base course we're using, the gap 20, a few fines in there, and sand obviously. That'll compact down exceptionally tight with a couple of 2-3 runs with the plate compactor. And we want to set it about 15-20 mils below the surface of the concrete and surrounding pathway and curbing. You need to give it 2 to 3 passes with the vibrating plate compactor, relatively level and flat, just waiting for that blinding layer of sand or crusher dust. Once we've got the base prep, the gap 20 laid, we need to make sure that's about 20 mils below the surface of the concrete, surrounding concrete, fully compacted and level as can be. So here we're just taking a little bit of excess base course out of there, so that the finished height of the base course, gap 20, is sitting about 20 mils below the surface of the concrete, in preparation for the top 10 mil layer of fines, the gap 7 or a crusher dust. You can see the mix of fines that we're using. This is a gap 7. It is going to compact down pretty tight because of the moisture content. It is recommended to use a top layer of fines that has a mix of sand in it as well, so it does compact down tight. We've compacted the top layer of fines. You can see it's sitting 10-15 mils below the surface of the surrounding concrete. This is so that the edges of the turf, when it's laid, do not lift up and you cannot get your feet caught under it when walking across. So again, a couple of passes with the plate compactor to make sure that's sitting tight and isn't going to lift up, or the base isn't going to settle further, causing pits and hollows in the lawn surface once complete. So once we've plate compacted that final layer of fines, we need to run over it with a screed to make sure it's perfectly level, and we're getting those falls dead accurate. It's very important to get those falls accurate so there's no pooling of water, or it's actually angled away from the house and other areas where you don't want water pooling up, where there's no drainage. So we're using a screed to get it nice and level, and we'll remove any of that excess fines. So again, once we've got that top blinding layer compacted. We need to screed that so it's nice and level and it's sitting just below the surface of that boxing on the sides. So you can see it's sitting down 10 mils below the surface of that boxing. Again, that's so that the turf isn't going to sit proud of that boxing and become a trip hazard. Once the base is fully compacted with the top layer, we're to roll the turf out. It's good to let that sit for at least an hour before fixing it down. Cut it to length, the desired length for the area that you're laying it on. So we're cutting off the edging material, following the seam, so we've got a nice flush surface to work with. Once we've cut off the edging, we need to make sure we're trimming so there's no excess material sitting proud or above the boxing or the surrounding concrete, going to become a trip hazard. When we're cutting or trimming the turf, we need to ensure that we are cutting the back of the turf, not the front surface or the top of the turf. Cutting the back of the turf makes it a lot easier to cut straight and follow along with the edge of the concrete or the boxing. Once we've trimmed the turf to the right size, we are then fixing it every 250 mils around the perimeter with 6-inch galvanised nails. Make sure these nails have a flat head on them so they don't go through the base of the turf. We're cutting off the edge of the turf so we've got a nice flush surface to work with. This is a edge from manufacturing that's not required. With this particular edging, we are going to be joining the two lengths of turf, so this needs to be deadly accurate. We have laid our seam tape, holding it down with nails. It's a good idea to do this if it's a windy day. And we are spreading our adhesive across this tape with a notched trowel. It's a good option to use a disposable trowel, as a glue adhesive doesn't come off very well. Once we have glued the seam tape, we need to place the one length of turf across it and make sure it's firmly adhered to that seam tape. Spread any excess glue across, and we need to then place a second piece of turf, joining the two together. Once our turf is joined at the seam, we then need to run down the seam, either side of the seam, with 6-inch nails, galvanised nails, to hold that in place. Again, placing those every 250-300 mil. Once the turf is joined at the seam, we're using a carpet stretcher to stretch the turf across to the seam to pull any wrinkles out of the turf and keep it taut. And as we're stretching it, we are fixing it down with 6-inch nails around the perimeter. Again, 250 to 300 mil spacings. You can see we're using a knee kicker carpet stretcher to pull that turf across to the edge, keeping it taut. And as we hold it in place with the carpet stretcher, we're fixing it down with nails. Once we've got our turf in place, we're going around the edges, the perimeter, and any paving stones like this one with a plastic chisel or similar to push that edge down. The base prep should be 10 mils below the surface of this paving area so the turf isn't sitting proud. It is always a good idea to push that edge of the turf down even further if possible. Just joining a small strip of turf. Again, with the adhesive being applied with a notched trowel on seam tape. When we come to join the two edges of the turf together, it's a good option to use one person down the edge of the turf, keeping the two sides apart. And when we are putting them together, we are marrying the two edges of the turf together to ensure that no fibres get stuck down to the seam tape and the glue. Again, we're using a carpet stretcher, knee kicker, to pull the turf tight, ensuring that seam is tightly joined at the seam there. And then we're fixing it through with the 6-inch galvanised nails either side of that seam. We then go through either side of the turf join with nails, fixing every 250 mils to 300 mils. Once we have got our turf installed, go around the edge with a plastic chisel or similar, just to push that edge further down so that there's no chance of that sitting proud, particularly if you're not fixing that directly to a boxing or a timber edging. It's time to put our sand across. We're using 20 kg bags of sand in this instance. So spread that nice and evenly, about 12 to 14 kgs per square metre. Now then brushing it nice and evenly with a hard bristle broom, just to try and make sure we've got good coverage across the lawn. While we're doing this, we're not trying to get it down into the turf fibres so much, as we will be going across this with a power broom at a later date or further in the process. Once we've spread it across with the hard bristle broom, you can see areas that haven't had sufficient sand, and it's just topping that up to make sure we've got sufficient coverage across the whole area of turf. About 14 kgs per metre squared. The sand we're using is a silica sand or a kiln dried sand. It's imperative that a dried sand is used so it actually brushes into the fibres. A wet sand will not brush down. Once we've brushed our sand in with a hard bristle broom, we're then running over it with a power broom. That is going to get the sand down to the base of the turf. The objective of this is to ensure that the fibres of the turf stand upright, and also the sand is getting right to the base, which is going to add weight to the turf so it doesn't lift or blow away. The sand is going to help those bristles of the turf, the fibres, stand upright and remain upright. When the turf is installed, all the fibres are going to be laying flat in one direction. So it's important when you are going across it with the power broom that we are flicking the turf up in the opposite direction so that it's standing upright. Take note of the way that the broom operates, the direction that brush. So basically when the turf comes out of the roll, all the fibres are naturally laying down flat this way. In this instance, got the sand on, and then we've actually fluffed this one up already. But basically you are starting in this direction and working your way back with the machine, and as you're going it is flicking those fibres up and getting the sand down deep. So I've already done this one here. So what I'm doing here, guys, as you can see, the nail heads have tripped a bit of the grass fibres below. I can see it's getting in there. Hard to see, but you actually should just get in there with another nail and flick those fibres out, or something sharp just from below it where it's actually trapped them down, because that sand is just sitting on top of that and it's making it pretty obvious that it's been held down by nails. So you just get in there with another nail or something sharp, a flat screwdriver even, small, and just flicking those fibres out. Once we have brushed our sand down into the fibres, do a quick check to make sure there's sufficient sand coverage, and then it's clean up time. So we've got a leaf blower here, just blowing any excess sand or fibres or anything that might be left over on top of the turf to give that pristine finish.